Coming to you from sunny Orlando, Florida, welcome to the Paperstac Podcast, where we cover current topics in the note industry, give you tactics for your note business, and talk with industry leaders to make you a better note investor. And now, your hosts, Brett Burky and Rick Allen.
Welcome back to the Paperstac Podcast. My name is Rick Allen. This is my co-host, Brett Burky, here to bring you guys another episode from our new series that we launched, which everybody seems to love, My First Note, where we talk to industry experts who have been in the business a while, and they tell us about their experience buying their first note. I love this series because we get a lot of nuggets from it.
Yeah, we just talked to Chris a little bit earlier, and he blew our minds.
Yes. We've got today Jamie Bateman, who is going to share some of his knowledge bombs with us, tell us his story, where he came from, and his first note. So, Jamie, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely. This is awesome, guys. I haven't talked to you guys in a little bit, so this is great to catch up.
IMN, right?
It is good to catch up. Was it IMN?
It was IMN Orlando. Jamie was there with his daughter. That's right. He came down to Orlando. Got to hang out.
That's right.
Yeah,
went to Disney.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So
hopefully we can provide a little value.
Yeah, so I know your background. You came from a real estate background. I remember you said you worked for title companies and...
I don't know. Tell us about it.
You go ahead. Yes, but a lot of people don't know what I do, but go ahead.
January 6th, 1976. No, I'm just kidding. That is a fact. But yeah, I got out of athletics was always a big part of my life. And when I graduated college, again, not that this is my biography here, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And the first quote unquote real job that I got was at a title company. It's not that I was drawn to that in any way, shape, or form, but I got hired at a title company. I was a settlement officer driving around doing refinances and doing the rising, doing the documents, and doing a bunch of closings. My father is still a real estate agent, and he actually played a role in this in our first note, which we'll get to, my first note. But so I had a little bit of a background in residential real estate, and then I did work for a mortgage broker for a little bit. Then I went on to join the military and work for the Department of Defense.
Oh, wow.
But I always wanted to do my own thing. And so what I ended up doing career-wise was pivoting. So I worked, after getting out of the military, I worked as a civilian for the Department of Defense for 14 years. The second half of that career, I was part-time. And that whole 7 years where I was part-time for the government, I was building my real estate businesses. And at that point, it was single-family residential rental properties. And we've done, my wife and I have done a bunch of rehabs and the BRRRR method, which your listener may be familiar with. And so from 2010 to about 2018, I was really focused on single-family residential rental properties, which I still have. But in 2018, I pivoted into notes, and we can get into that. So that's a little bit of my background. There's obviously a lot more, but that's what's most relevant to this conversation.
Perfect. So I guess it sounds like 2018, that's the magical year. That's when you took a dive into the notes pool, and pun intended there.
Got it.
Just try to get your feet wet. Yeah, tell me about, where'd you find your first note? How did it come across your desk? Were you doing research and looking into notes? Were you just tired of the real estate game? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, great questions. It was that I was getting a little bit tired of the real estate game. I still think rentals have their place, and personally, every asset class and every strategy has pros and cons, and you got to figure out what's best for you. But I was a little bit tired of the rentals. Okay, I got this. I figured this out. Our rental properties were essentially the exact same type of house, and all right, I get it. So I got a little bit bored with it, to be honest with you, and so I started looking into something. I wanted to find something that was a little bit more passive, and I did find tax liens and notes, and started researching through Bigger Pockets, the forums on there, as well as the podcast. I'm trying to compare kind of those different strategies. I wanted something that I could do from home, from anywhere really, but something that was location independent and that I could scale, get in fairly easily, and be able to scale as a business. And notes just kept coming to the forefront. So yeah, I just continued to read books and listen to podcasts and read online about mortgage note investing, and haven't looked back.
Nice. Nice.
Good stuff. So where'd you find your first note?
So the first note I actually did as a joint venture with Chris Seveny, who I think you were referring to earlier, and because I knew enough to know that I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to find somebody who knew a little bit more, and Chris had been in the note space for a few years at that point, and so I met him on Bigger Pockets. Funny, we didn't actually meet in person for 4 years, but essentially Chris found the note. Yeah, we live like an hour away, and we're now business partners, but that's a separate conversation. But Chris found the note is the short answer, but I found Chris, and then he found the deal. It's actually a deal that was in Maryland, which is where I'm located, and it's one of the few deals that I've actually personally been to the property.
Yeah.
But found it through Chris, and that's one of those typical JV deals you might hear about where one person provides the capital, the other person provides the day-to-day management. Both parties should be involved in the decision-making of a joint venture deal, but that's how I found the deal, was through Chris.
Interesting. I think he was talking about the JV stuff.
Yeah.
He was bringing that up.
He mentioned it. Did he do the 50-50 with you up front, or was it 60-40?
It was a 50-50 split, so it was a non-performing contract for deed in Maryland, and I've since bought a bunch of contracts for deed, and that I have a love-hate relationship with them. But yeah, it was a 50-50 split of any profits that were going to come in.
So what happened? What happened in the deal? Walk us through it. Were you actively involved in the management? I know it's a 50-50 deal, and that he was going to do most of the work. You made some of the decisions with him, but you did this as a learning. I assume you did this as a way to learn with somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, smart.
And that was exactly what I was trying to do, was get my feet wet, as you said, in the shallow end of the pool, but have somebody there to help manage the deal, someone who was more experienced. And so this was contract for deed in Maryland, a non-performing contract for deed. Mm-hmm. At this point, Chris was well on his way of doing a bunch of joint ventures. So this wasn't, the joint venture concept for him wasn't new, or buying notes wasn't new. So I felt more comfortable having that partner as opposed to me just jumping in without having a clue what I was doing. And the fact that it was in Maryland gave me a little bit of comfort as well, since I'm in Maryland. I could just physically go there if need be for whatever reason. Yeah, we actually bought the CFD for $28,000. We were working with Brian Gallagher, who's an attorney in Maryland, and I still work with Brian, and the property on paper had a lot of equity in it, and we'll get into this, but I think it might have been, and some of these CFDs, you got to be careful, but I want to say on paper it was worth $100,000, and we paid $28,000. So again, not for the property per se. I know you guys have done episodes on CFDs, so we don't have to go into the details of how that works, but we're buying the contract for that, for the contract for deed for $28,000. Yeah, so the whole goal with it was to ideally either, there, as you guys know, there are many ways you can exit a non-performing deal, but really they're broken down into two main categories. One is through the borrower, and the other is through the property. We tried many times to work through the borrower to try to get her to cooperate, to either do a modification or maybe cancel the land contract or something like that. But so we ended up having to pursue foreclosure, actually, because in Maryland you can't do Maryland's kind of a weird state, and it's like a judicial sort of non-judicial state where you have deed of trust, but anyway, in this case it's a contract for deed, and a lot of people think that when you buy a CFD, you can just do a forfeiture, you wave your magic forfeiture wand, and 2 weeks later, you cancel the contract. Exactly. So there's a lot more involved with this, especially in a state like Maryland. So we were pursuing foreclosure, got very close to the finish line of that, and then eventually got her to sign a cancellation of land contract, and we exited through the property. But there were a lot of ups and downs with this one. One quick thing I want to mention. Now, Chris was very good at communicating. We were always on the same page. He did communicate a good bit about this deal. So this is not a slam on Chris, but I'm driving into work and I'm listening to Chris's podcast, and he's referring to a CFD in Maryland and how there's a $10,000 water bill.
Oh no.
Yeah. You can see where this is going. I'm glad you guys stuck it out and listened to me for the last few minutes, because this part's worth it. I was like, as soon as I got into work, I emailed him. I'm like, how many CFDs in Maryland do you have? Is this our deal? There's a $10,000 water bill? He's, oh yeah, that is our deal. I meant to tell you about that. Again, Chris is great. He's very communicative, but that one, I think he had just had 1,000 things going on, and
That one fell through the cracks.
exactly.
So you heard about it on the podcast. That's
You
wonderful.
got it.
That's
Exactly. Yeah, so that was funny. But we ended up, the short version is we exited through the property. I went to the property twice. It was an absolute disaster. And this is one of the risks of note investing, is you can't typically get inside the property when you're buying the note or the CFD. And so, again, I know you guys talk about, there are a lot of great things about note investing, otherwise I wouldn't still be in it. But that's one of the things that you need to be careful about, is, or just realize that there's a risk associated with, is you can't get in the property, so you don't know what the inside looks like.
I gotta tell you, I've had, you know what gets me, has bit me in the butt so many times, is a basement. When there's a basement and it gets flooded, and then you're doing mold remediation and the whole thing, that can really take a deal and just kill it. And
it's funny, it's funny you say that, because my father was the realtor on this deal, and he actually, I think he put in the listing, do not go into the basement.
Was it flooded?
Yeah, it was. If it wasn't actively flooded, it had been for quite some time. The $10,000 water bill was because of a leak, and an interior leak, and she was no longer living. The borrower was no longer in the property. I never went into the basement myself, but it was pretty nasty for sure.
How did it turn out? Did you make it around the racetrack and turn a profit, or did you took one on the chin, but you learned a lot?
Yeah, great question. We did a podcast episode. We called this Nightmare on Elm Street, talking about this exact deal on our old podcast, and it was actually on Elm Street. And so at the time of that recording, we thought we were going to take one on the chin, and we were pretty certain we weren't going to make any money. But when things actually when the dust settled, we actually made about $800. So now, mind you, this is 2.5 years of work, and probably much more than just the $28,000 that we had into it. In the end, we learned more than we made.
Yeah,
we didn't lose money.
That's good, and that's always the key. It's interesting. I look at like the first deal I did, just crushed it, just absolutely crushed it. It was just by fluke. And I look back and I go, what were to happen if it would have turned out poorly? Because when I got into it, I wasn't very smart like you and got a JV partner. I just bought one. It was like $8,400. I'm just going to throw $8,400 at this and see what happens if I lose on it. But I have a feeling, I can do something with this. And looking back now, I'm like, holy cow. I always say I walked through a minefield and just managed to not blow my legs off and made it through the other side, and did that actually quite a few more times and got some education at that point. So it's just, but hey, you know what? You made $800. You learned a lot, and
2 years, huh? So what, after the fact, you're sitting there, I can just imagine your face. You're looking like, 2 years of my time and I made $800. What made you go, you know what? I'm going to do that again. Double down on that.
Yeah, did you keep going after so you did your first JV with Chris? Did you wait for it to run its course for 2 years, or did you get in there and say, I got it, let's go?
No, I got in there 2018. I learned by doing. It's just like most of us. You got to roll up your sleeves and buy a note from Paperstac and get in there and get dirty a little bit. Of course, you want to get educated and you want to partner up with people who know what they're doing. But no, I got in there. I will say, one of my regrets looking back is I think I was a little bit too passive initially. So I had some capital I was going to put to work, and did put that to work. But for the rest of 2018 for the most part. I had a couple of other deals I did that year, but I didn't really expand as much as I wasn't quite as active as I wish I had been. But then toward the end of 2018 and from the end of 2018 through mid 2023, where we are now, we've grown considerably, and I've got 2 small note funds that we manage, and it's my day-to-day business. We opened a servicing company, Bi-Fi Loan Servicing.
Yeah.
I've treated this like a business, and to answer your question, I didn't wait for 2.5 years. I went all in, but that's one of the things I love about note investing is you can do it. You can buy a note or 2 and just hold them, or you can really turn this into an active business if you really want to be an active. You can scale this business. I don't want to say easily because it definitely takes work, but you can make it what you want. So there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to note investing. But we've scaled in the last 5 years considerably.
When did you end up leaving your professional job? When was that?
That was March of 2022, and so a little over a year ago. Just the short version is I was out of work for a few months. I ruptured my Achilles through the manly sport of badminton. And I go back into work when I finally could drive, because it was my right leg, so I couldn't actually drive for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
And I go back into work, and this is a funny story. I'll just tell quickly. I'm sure you've seen the Office Space.
Yes.
The guy, essentially, he gets moved to the basement, and then he's not even on payroll anymore. And so I go to my desk, what I thought was my desk, and there's some kid sitting there. Now, a 25-year-old is a kid to me, but
yeah.
I said, yeah, I know. I'm sure you don't know my name or anything, but this was my desk a few months ago, and I don't know who you are, and he just looks away and starts typing again, and I'm just like, okay, this is awesome. So go back. I'm into work. I have no idea where I sit anymore.
Did you at least take your red stapler?
Part-time.
You took the red stapler, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Finally find my desk. Or I see a desk with like broken monitors and a box that says Jamie on it. And I'm just like, this is awesome. I feel great right now. I feel they really need me. And I kid you not, I resigned that day. I still worked for a couple more months, but I knew that I was done.
Yeah.
I literally submitted my resignation that day.
Were you done before you went there? Had you found your desk? Would you have stuck around?
It was a matter of time, but that solidified it.
Did they?
No.
What do they say? What do they say about moving your desk? Do they have any excuse at all?
It's just, no. Once I finally got logged on and everything, you're just a number. Now, granted, that's the federal government. It's a big organization. I'm not saying every W-2 is like that, or you shouldn't be an employee or something like that. But yeah, you're right. I had checked out, and so
you were done.
But the reality was, no one called me the entire time. This isn't a sympathy play for me, but the entire time I was out, the only call I got from management was, hey, did you get vaccinated? Because you have to be vaccinated to get inside the building. So we'll leave that there. But yes, I had been. But they never called to check on me. They never asked how my recovery was going or anything like that. My wife and I had conversations about me leaving, but we didn't know it was going to be that day. I was going to quit.
Did you come home and say, yeah, that was it? I quit. That was it? Oh, it froze up for a second.
What did that conversation look like when you went back to the house? So Brett asked a question, like, what was that?
Talk to your wife.
When you talked to your wife and came home and said, hey, I just quit my job.
I'm not sure if I should admit that Chris 70 knew before my wife did, but yeah, we had talked about it. She knew it was coming. She didn't know it was going to be that day or that weekend. I didn't either, but she was very supportive, honestly. She knew my heart wasn't in that job anymore, and she's been great through the years for sure. She and I have done a lot of our investing together. She used to work in my note business with me until COVID happened, and she was more of a stay-at-home homeschool teacher. But yeah, she was very supportive. So she knew it was going to happen at some point.
Good. Interesting. That's so cool to hear like these different stories, because You look at people get into the business, and then it goes from, hey, I'm doing this as just another way to do some investing. It's a different tool. I'm tired of the grind of doing the real estate. I want to maybe expand a little bit to then it's a full business, and it's okay. Not only is it a full business, but there's a business that's been created to cater to this business in BiFi. And so you look at it, and I think that's one of the things that I noticed about the note industry when I got into it. It was very, I would say, immature. It just wasn't it hadn't been around forever at the level that you enter into it at. It was certainly the big meltdown facilitated the growth of it. But you look at it, when we got into it, I was like, how am I going to sell these things or list it? And I'm like, okay, you're doing it with spreadsheets and email, and then we need to make something, and then you got obviously Paperstac and now note closings and then BiFi. It's just really interesting how people get into it, and you can go a lot of different ways for it, where you can truly make other businesses out of it, or you can say, look, I'm happy with my 9-to-5 W-2, and this is just how I'm growing my portfolio or managing my self-directed retirement accounts. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of businesses are born out of frustration with other businesses, and I know. Not that it's easy to do a startup, as you guys know. There's always iterations, and there's a lot of work, but yeah, you were frustrated with the spreadsheets and emails, and so you created Paperstac, and we started BiFi because of frustration with other servicers. And it's not to say BiFi doesn't have room for improvement. It's not to say other servicers are terrible, of course, right? I still use other servicers. They all have pros and cons.
Correct.
But yeah, you're right. The industry as a whole, even you've been in it longer than I have, Rick, it's a lot more professional and streamlined and efficient than it was, years ago.
Oh yeah. I've been in
it
11 years. 11 years, and I've seen it change so much in a decade. But okay, you've got a lot going on now. What advice would you give to somebody who's getting into the note space right now?
Don't pull your Achilles, right?
Don't. Badminton is a rough sport. Thanks, Brett. It is a largely unregulated space, and therefore you do need to partner up with people who know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's a team sport, but you got to be careful who you partner up with. So I built enough trust with Chris, where I partnered up with Chris and felt confident enough to move forward with him. So I don't go alone. Don't go at this alone. It's a team sport. Whether that means seeking out formal mentorship or a group to join, or I know you have the Paperstac Academy. Get training, get educated, talk to other people about who you can trust in this space, because there are people you probably shouldn't trust in this space. Mm-hmm. But in general, there are a lot of really good people in the note space, and there are a lot of people who are willing to help you out. Don't go at this alone would be my first piece of advice.
Good stuff. That's great advice.
Yeah, we haven't heard that one yet.
No, that's not one we've heard of. I got a question outside of this. It sounds like you played college athletics. You were an athlete. Yes. What'd you play?
I played lacrosse at Gettysburg College. Yeah, we were number one in Division III in the country my senior year until we choked in the national quarterfinals. So furthest we ever got was the semifinals.
What position?
Yeah, I played attack. Yeah, I was good at seeing things. I was good at getting open, scoring goals, finishing things in a good way. We're on the backs of the people who did all the work. But no, it was an awesome sport. My family's a big lacrosse family. Mm-hmm. My father's been a referee for many years.
Oh, wow.
Most of my siblings played in college as well. So it's a great sport.
My son, he's 14 now. We live in Florida. He's been wanting to play ice hockey. I'm like, man, you have to learn to. Yeah, there's options, but it's not just learning the game of hockey. You have to learn to skate, and most of the kids you're going to get have been skating. And he was like, what about lacrosse? I'm like, absolutely. I think it looks like a cool sport. I don't know anything about it, so he started lacrosse in January. And he absolutely fell in love with it. He's running around the house at all times with the lacrosse stick, curling it, doing spin moves.
Yeah.
And he picked it up. He's picked it up so quickly. He's an attack. He's left-handed.
That's a key. That's a strength right there.
Huge.
He's got an advantage.
He's got a huge advantage, and this spring he's going to go out for. He'll be a freshman this year, so he's going to go out for the high school team, and he's playing catch up now, just because when you're starting something at 13, it doesn't seem like these days you might as well not even do it. No. But he's picking it up really quickly, so that's pretty cool. He played lacrosse. He's all in.
It's grown a lot, the sport, in the last 10, 15 years. But
it wasn't available. It wasn't available here in Florida. There was. When did he graduate?
2003 or
in '98. Like when I graduated, lacrosse. You didn't even see it.
You might have heard of it, but and there's so many lessons from lacrosse or any other team sport or any other sports in general. I've learned so much from just being a part of that. And I was a coach as well for a bit before I worked at the title company. But
cool.
So many lessons from team sports that I think you can apply to building a note business or anything else.
Just life.
So, it's huge. Yep.
Good stuff, man. Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your experience. I know people love this. They love this series, and they're going to listen to it and chew it up. And you gave us a shameless plug for Paperstac, and you definitely got some plugs in there for BuyFi, which, hey, if you're a note investor and you're looking for... Before we go, tell them about the name, BuyFi.
Yeah, BuyFi stands for Buy Investors for Investors, and we started it because we were frustrated with other servicers. So it's a loan servicing company catered to your listener, which is maybe the mom and pop note investor out there who has 1 to 10 loans. We certainly are open to more than that, but we're here for the investor. That's the reason for the name BuyFi Loan Servicing.
Fantastic. Cool. Yep, definitely check it out. I always like something created by people who are in the industry, and they know the weaknesses and the areas that they can improve on. So kudos to you. So anyways, that's it for this edition of the Paperstac Podcast. Rick Allen, Brett Burky signing off. Jamie, thank you. We will catch you guys on the next one.
See ya.
Are you new to the mortgage note industry? Have you been wanting to learn the step-by-step process to purchase your first mortgage note? Well, you're in luck. We've convinced our CEO, Rick Allen, to break down everything he knows about mortgage note investing. Through a series of 50 videos, you'll get everything from start to finish of where to purchase notes, how to purchase notes, and all of Rick's investing techniques he has developed over the many years. From performing note tactics to non-performing notes, Rick gives you everything he knows about investing. Bonuses include our glossary of industry terms, Rick's own proprietary calculators he created to evaluate notes, discounts from our partners, our Rolodex of vendors, a private Facebook group, along with a lot more. We've packed so much content into the Academy to take you from beginner to expert in no time. To learn more about the Academy, go to academy.paperstac.com/welcome. Again, that is academy.paperstac.com/welcome.